Talked about y equals mx plus b is a slope-intercept form of the line yesterday, where m, the one in front of x, is a slope. The number by itself is a y-intercept. On the right there, you have the slope formula that you used last year in Algebra 1. If that's the way you like to solve for slope, that's great. Go ahead and use that. The examples I do today, I'm not going to use that. But if you're comfortable with this, then go ahead. I'm going to do a different way. So we just talked about how slopes of parallel lines are the same. And we wrote some examples. So here are two lines that would have the same slope, y equals 3x. Now let's do y equals 2x. 2x plus 5. And y equals 2x plus 10. They both have a slope of 2, and so they're going to end up being parallel. Their y-intercepts are different. Perpendicular lines, as we just discussed, have opposite reciprocal slopes. Opposite means to negate. So change the sign. Reciprocal means to flip. So negate and flip. So an example of that would be like 2/3 x plus 1 and negative 3/2 x plus 1. Because one is positive, one is negative, and they're flipped. So we're going to look at these slopes of these lines and decide if they're parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So number 1, could you please turn to your partner and tell them parallel, perpendicular, or neither for number 1. Jacob and Cooper, please talk. Parallel, perpendicular, neither.
Parallel.
Brandon, what are they going to be? How do you know that they're parallel? Right. Both have a slope of 3. Okay, let's move on to number 2. The deal with number 2 is before you actually decide if they're parallel, perpendicular, or neither, you got to solve for y. So that y is by itself and it's in slope-intercept form. So we would divide by 4. So that would look like we're doing x divided by 4 and 3 divided by 4. X divided by 4 is the same thing as 1/4 x. And so we can actually write this as y equals 1/4 x plus 3/4. So here are your two equations. So if it's in something like this where it's not y equals, you need to get it in y equals first. Discuss with your partner parallel, perpendicular, or neither. And tell them why.
Neither.
Okay. Luke, are they going to be parallel, perpendicular, or neither?
Perpendicular.
Luke, why are they perpendicular? I agree.
Because of opposite reciprocals.
Right.
Oh, and you forgot the kid.
Perpendicular. Okay. If you like the slope formula and you want to use the slope formula to find the slope, by all means go ahead. I'm not going to do that because I find that students tend to make a few more mistakes when they use the formula. I'm actually going to make a table and use that. So just a reminder that slope is the change in y over the change in x. And so we're going to figure out the change in y and change in x. So we're going to start with L1. L1 and L2 are just lines. So you're going to see me make a little table, and I'm going to put the x and y values into the table. Go 1 and 2, and 3 and 1. Reese, what's my change in x?
2.
We're adding 2. Dylan, what's my change in y?
Subtracting one.
Yep. So we put that in a fraction. Change in y goes on the top, -1. Change in x goes on the bottom, 2. So the slope between 1/2 or 1, 2 and 3, 1 is 1/2. So the slope of the line L1 is -1/2. We're going to do the same type of thing for L2. Again, if you like the slope formula, then do that. I'm not. I'm going to make a table and use the table. So I plug in my points to my table. Alex, what's my change in y? +1. Liz, what's my change in x? From 0 to 2, what's it do? Add 2. So now we put that in a fraction, change in y over change in x. 1 over 2. So look at your two slopes. -1/2, +1/2. Are they parallel, perpendicular, or neither? Please discuss. These are what, guys?
Nothing.
They're neither, because while you have opposites, they're not flipped. And since they're opposites, they're not the same. And so these are neither. You can't say they're parallel, you can't say they're perpendicular. If you feel good about these problems and you want to do the next one on your own, that's fine. I'm going to go through it on the board. So we find the slope for L1. I'm going to use a table. 0, 3, 3, 1. My change in y is -2. My change in x is +3. So we put that in a fraction. -2 over 3. And repeat that process for the other line. My change in y is -9. My change in x is -6. So our slope, again, is change in y over change in x. So you'd put -9 over -6. When you're doing your homework today, you have to simplify if possible. So what can -9 and -6 both be divided by, guys? 3. And let's go ahead and use -3 since we have two negatives and we want it to be positive. So So we're going to divide by -3. And we should get +3/2. So your two slopes are 3/2 and -2/3. They are perpendicular, they're opposite reciprocals. Okay. You can go to the next page. So now we're going to talk about writing equations. Well, why did it go away? See, and then it flipped the page and it freaks. We're going to write a few steps at the top. How to solve for b using y equals mx plus b. So 3 short steps. You may have done this last year. In case you forgot, I'm just going to remind you. First thing you do is find the slope. Second thing you do, plug in m, which is the slope. and a point xy. Then solve for b. So this first example says write an equation of the line passing through the point 1, -1 that is parallel to the line with the equation y equals 2x minus 1. So we want a new line that's parallel to 2x minus 1. So if it's parallel, Sophia, if it's parallel to that line, what would the slope need to be?
2x.
Right, slope needs to be 2 because they have to be the same. So we're going to write an equation in y equals mx plus b. So we're going to plug in the slope where m goes. So instead of putting m, we'll put 2x plus b. And then we're going to use this point. 1, -1. It has to go through that point. So I'm going to write it down. 1, -1. The first number is x, the second number is y. So put -1 where y is, and put 1 where x is. So -1 equals 2 times 1 plus b. So I'm just replacing x and y. That way the only letter I have left is b to solve for. 2 times 1 gives me 2. So 2 plus b. And now to get rid of that 2, what do I need to do? So our answer would be -3 equals b. So you have m and b. You put it together in an equation. 2x minus 3. Y equals mx plus b. So make sure you write an equation after you've found m and b. Okay. Last one. It says write an equation of the line passing through the point 3, 2 that is perpendicular to the line K that has an equation of -3x plus 1. If we want it perpendicular to -3x plus 1, Tori, what does my slope need to be if it's perpendicular? If we want it to be perpendicular to -3, what would the slope need to be?
1/3.
So we get that opposite reciprocal slope. We plug it in to y equals mx plus b. 1/3 x plus b. Use your point. 3, 2 for x and y. So 2 goes in the x spot, no, 2 goes in y. 3 goes in x. What's 1/3 times 3? 1. And if you are feeling unsure, then you can put 3 over 1 and multiply across. You get 3 over 3, which is 1. Oops. So 2 equals 1 plus b, subtract the 1, and you should get 1 is equal to b. Happens to be the same. Write it all out in your equation. So the equation would be 1/3 x plus 1.